Okay.
Okay, and we're recording, so you may begin.
All right. So I'm going to be giving you a lot of information because there's a lot to tell you. So my slides are going to be full, and I hate doing that because that's something that I try not to do in my lectures. But because we have a short amount of time, I want to make this information available to you. So I'm glad that this is being recorded so people can look back. And I guess it'd be best to keep your questions at the end then, Akil. Is that the way you have it? Okay. So why don't we just get started? All right. So we're looking at this graduate school application process. I myself went through the application process. I did a little differently just because of my own circumstances, but now being on the receiving end of applications, right, it allows me to have a little bit of an insight that I'm happy to share with you. Okay, so just a bit of a disclaimer. So that's why I was asking at the beginning what kind of programs you were applying to. So the information I'm going to share with you this evening is really geared towards those who are going towards research. So I was hearing a bit of that, not really much experience in professional schools, but again, the principles still remain the same. Okay, so when should you start looking for schools? As soon as you know the type of program that interests you. So even if you're in your second year, your third year, your fourth year, I don't think it's too early just to start seeing what kind of schools are out there. And by this time, you should start having an idea of which areas interest you, which I heard from you when I was speaking to you earlier. And you need to make sure that graduate school is for you and it's what you want to do for the next 2 to 5 years of your life. So I spent 6 years in graduate school. That's 2 years master's, 4 years PhD. It's a lot of work and a lot of commitment, and a lot of other parts of your life are put on hold. So make sure that this is something that you really want to do, okay? And also depending, like if you continue on to a PhD, there could be internship. If you're doing a clinical program, there could be postdoc years attached to that. So it is a lot of time commitment, especially if you want to go past a master's. Most master's degrees, though, are only about 2 years, so that's a shorter time commitment. When should you start looking for schools? Again, no later than the beginning of the summer before you plan to apply. So if you are wanting to begin graduate school next fall, fall 2022, then it's good for you to start looking at schools this summer, all right? Because searching for graduate schools can be extremely time consuming. The task can easily take hours of your time, and you will also need to visit each school on the internet to ensure they are what you are looking for in a school, right? So you want to make sure, so you have an idea of the area of study that you're interested in. So when you visit the schools that say, okay, they have public health, and then you're going to look and see what areas of public health, and if it's not the areas of public health you're interested in, look somewhere else, right? Make sure that you're getting what you have in mind. So how do you choose a school? Again, based on your interests, whether there is a professor there who is doing research you would like to do. So I finished graduate school a few years ago. I started applying. And when I did that, I'm doing research and realizing that the process hasn't really changed much. So the best thing to do is you're going to want to speak directly to a professor. You can go on the websites and see the professors that are studying an area that you like. And it doesn't hurt to send a little introductory email and say, hi, I'm interested in your area of study. I've read some of your papers, and actually read 1 or 2 articles. You know, academics are happy when their work has been read, and say, I'm wondering if you're taking any students in fall 2022. And that way you'll know if it's worth your time applying, and you've also put your name kind of in their radar, right? So make sure that you reach out to the professors individually. That doesn't hurt. And since graduate school admissions can be so competitive, you should choose up to 10 schools. Now, the application process can get intensive, but you know what kind of program you're applying to and how competitive it is. And I wouldn't suggest any less than 5 schools, okay? So you want to cast your net widely to make sure, like, if this is really your dream, then you want to give yourself that chance to succeed. Okay. Something else to consider is based on internal funding available to students. So the good thing about graduate school is that in most cases, especially research schools, research programs, graduate students are fully funded. So your tuition is paid for, and then you get a stipend. And when I say stipend, I mean a stipend, but it's usually enough for you to be able to at least pay rent and eat. Because when you are a graduate student, you're expected to work for the school, usually as a graduate assistant. So you will get a monthly stipend and your tuition will be taken care of. So you want to make sure that the school you're applying to offers this possibility to you, because who wants more student debt? Next, I have here based on geography. If you're glued to, staying as close to your family as possible, maybe you have your reasons that you need to do this, but I would like you to think broadly. So you can stay in Canada, you can think of the United States, you can even check out some schools in Europe. Sometimes the Europe funding, even international students can attend school for free. They just have to pay fees. I'm not an expert on that. You'd have to do some research, but that is something that I know. So unless you really need to stay close to home to where you are, I would suggest looking at schools in multiple different areas. Another reason to start looking so soon is that you can find out important information. So maybe the school that you want to go to, I keep using public health because that's what I remember Akil saying, maybe they require specific classes as prerequisites to enter their program. And if you are looking at this, right before you graduate, then I'd be like, oh, I should have taken this class, right? So it's good to start looking now. And if you have to take an extra class this coming year, that would allow you to be a little bit more competitive or to qualify you for the graduate class that you're trying to attend, that would be a good idea. Some schools might require specific number of credits in a certain area, right? So there might be a psychology program that you're applying to and they require a random 18 credits of life sciences. So it's good for you to know that ahead of time so that if you're missing those 18 credits, you can get those. There's also something called GRE. If you're going to business school, the GMAT. If you're going to law school, the LSAT, right? There's these exams that one must take. And most schools have these arbitrary cutoff scores that they'll say. So maybe they say you have to have a 1200 combined verbal and quantitative on the GRE. So the GRE has 3 components: a verbal exam, a quantitative exam, measuring your math abilities, your verbal abilities, and then there's a written component as well. So they might say to even be considered for the school, you have to have a 1200, your combined scored on the verbal and the quantitative. So if you don't do well on the GRE and you take it way in advance, then you have a chance to take it again to build up your score. So it's good for you to start looking early to see what the requirements are so you know what the minimum score is, right? So you can work towards that when you're taking these exams. There could be other tests required. There are GRE subject tests. So example for psychology, some psychology programs will require you to take the GRE subject test in psychology. So it's good to know that ahead of time too. Application deadlines. Most schools have deadlines in January and February. However, many actually have deadlines that are much earlier. Okay, you'll find that I have most schools in January, February. I would say most schools have a deadline by the 1st of December, but some have deadlines in October. So you don't want to miss the school of your choice simply because you didn't start looking soon enough and you missed the deadline. Because those schools, once the deadline cutoff has passed, they're not going to be accepting your application. So make sure that you start looking now so you can see when those deadlines are. Also selection criteria. So schools may list their selection criteria and what they will be looking for in an applicant. So maybe if you have a specific research program in mind, they might say they're looking for you to have specific research experience in this one area. So it might give you time now to volunteer in a lab or find that experience that you need, right? And that gives you time to do that. So it might not just be the GPA or the GRE score, they're looking for a specific experience that you will bring. So you want to give yourself time to be able to get that. So where do you look? So I'm biased towards psychology because that's my area. But for instance, and this is the American Psychological Association, but they also have information on Canadian schools as well. So this website here, www.apa.org, for $20, you have 3 months access, and I'll show you what it does. So I'm not aware of a similar website for other fields of study, but speak to your professors, right? And speak to graduate students that are in your university. I know we're in the time of COVID now, and it's not as easy to just bump into people in the halls or in the cafeteria, what have you, but really reach out to your professors and maybe they can open the doors to you to find something equivalent in your area of study. But for example, I'm just going to show you what the website looks like for this apa.org page, right? So it will show you all of the psychology programs in the United States and in Canada. And then you can select up to 5 programs and you can compare them side by side, right? So here's developmental psychology. So all of the developmental psychology programs in North America, clinical psychology, and they have all of their application deadlines side by side, right? And they'll give you all sorts of things, tuition side by side. So these types of websites can really save you time. So this is the one for psychology. Again, reach out to your professors and do Google searches and see if you can find that will really cut down your time. Again, this is APA. So APA is American Psychological Association. There are equivalent associations in all fields of study. Find what the major association is for your particular area, and they will have these kind of resources. I'm sure that they will have these kind of resources there. And I have here in red, talk to your professors. They went through graduate school. They're probably coaching students at this moment, applying for graduate school. They have friends who teach in graduate schools who they might be able to email directly. So don't forget about that. Really use your professors as a resource. So they can make suggestions about different schools they know about and give you advice on schools that you have already found. So you can say, I've heard about the lab at this school. I've heard about the program at this school. What do you think? And your professors are great resources. So as I mentioned, plan to get applications during the summer before you apply, right? So you would be applying, let's say that you're wanting to go to graduate school next fall. So fall 2022. This summer, you should start looking at the applications. So most of these schools now by this summer, they should have a website up and you can take a look at what the application requires. So you're going to need a great deal of time to go through the applications, fill them out, plan and write your essays, get feedback on those essays. So really this is your job this summer if next fall is what you're expecting. Visit the schools online. So today most applications are online and they can be downloaded. If in the rare instance they still want you to mail in an application, I don't know if I would unless you really wanted to go to the school because that's a very antiquated way of doing things. But nonetheless, it's good for you to know ahead of time what is required of that application. Okay. You see me emphasizing this. You do not want to rush through these applications. So by all means, type. So even if these applications need to be mailed in and maybe you have to download a form, it would be best to type everything. Send all your GRE scores in early fall. So that means that if you are planning on sending an application in, so if you're planning on attending graduate school in fall 2022, that means by this summer, you should be writing the GRE, right? Or at least you're starting to study now. And then in the summer, you can write it. And if you don't like your score, then you have time to take it again. I forget how many weeks you have to wait between your first test taking and the second one. It might be 2 to 3 weeks. They might make you wait. So that's another thing you might want to research as well. But you want to get those GRE scores in early, okay? So in the fall. So follow all the instructions completely in the application. If you do not, the schools may take this as a sign of your work in general, and it can be one more way for them not to consider your application, because if there are many, many applicants, right, they can be looking for ways to just reduce the pile, and you don't want to be removed from that pile simply because you didn't follow instructions. So the GRE general tests, so take that the summer before you apply. The subject test the spring before you apply. That might be the best way to go, but that's just a way for you to avoid taking both at the same time. If you think you can handle both, then you can do both in the summer. So there are a number of GMAT and GRE prep courses where you can practice taking the GMAT or the GRE subject test. I remember I bought a GRE book, and I went to the Kaplan website. So Kaplan and Princeton Review both offer free online GRE prep tests. Do those, and you want to do it. So if you buy a GRE book, it's helpful because it gives you practice questions. But if you do the online test, it's better because when you take the actual GMAT or GRE, you're going to be doing it on a computer. So it's nice for you to practice in the same way in which you're going to be tested. It's a good idea to check with the schools at least 6 weeks before the deadlines to confirm that they have indeed received your GRE scores. So this is what happens. You go to an ETS testing site, and you can, while you're there, after you take the GRE, then a window will pop up and they will ask you, list 4 schools where you want your test scores to be sent. So make sure when you go, you have the schools in hand, so your top 4, and then ETS will automatically send your GRE schools to the admissions office at the schools that you indicate, okay? But sometimes things can go wrong, so it doesn't hurt to check with the school, to email and say, hey, I'm just making sure that you did indeed receive my GRE scores. All right, so when you are applying for graduate school, most likely you're gonna have to take the GRE or its equivalent, like the GMAT, LSAT, as I mentioned. And next are these essays. This is your way of standing out. This is how professors are gonna get to know you. And you will most likely have to write a separate essay for each school. So there isn't one essay that you can write and then you're going to send it to all the schools. Each school is going to want their own type of essay. So some are going to want a statement of purpose. Some are going to want to know about your research background and your research questions, what you aspire to do while you're in graduate school. So make sure you read those instructions carefully. Some schools might want your essay single space, others might want it double space. Again, follow their instructions carefully. All right, so that's what I just finished saying. So some schools might want a general essay about answering questions about your background, plans for the future, and others want research essays. So again, it's going to depend on the type of school to which you're applying. But these essays are going to be very important. So it's something that you want to start early, and it's something that you want your friends to read, and it's something that you want 2 or 3 professors to read and give you their input as well. So this is your one chance to sell yourself. A lot of schools will rank students based on the essay. So GPA is important, GRE schools are important, but especially if it's research and they want to know about your research. If you're coming with a really strong research background, you already have a publication, then that might beat someone that has a higher GPA than you and no research experience at all, right? So don't disqualify the essay, really sell yourself. Again, asking your professor to read your essays and give you feedback. So that's the GRE GMAT scores, your essay, and then you need letters of recommendation. Okay, you will need at least 3 strong letters of recommendation. These people should be professors who know more about you than just how you did in your class. So hopefully as you've gotten further in your education, right, your class sizes have perhaps become smaller, or you've been able to work with a professor, or there's a professor whose office hours you often go to and they can see the effort that you're putting in doing well in his or her class. So I have underlined here strong, right? When you ask your professors, ask them if they can write you a strong letter of recommendation, because the letters of recommendation do go a long way. And again, just as an act of courtesy, don't ask for a letter of recommendation, you know, a week before it's due. I get that. I get a pile of recommendation letters and then I feel badly because I don't want to take anyone's chances away, but then I can't spend as long in these recommendations letters as I would like to, right? So that's why you need to look into this early, so you know the deadline's early, and you can give your professors up to a month, you know, no less than 3 weeks to write you a good letter of recommendation. I just have here, just let your professors know. There used to be a time where professors would have to write a letter of recommendation, sign the flap of the envelope, mail it back to you, and then you would mail it into the school. So I have that here. Again, I don't imagine that many schools do that anymore. Usually what you'll have to do is just submit the name and email address of the professor who is writing you the recommendation letter. They will get an email and they'll fill everything out online. Okay, so mail or send your applications so that they're at least 3 weeks early. That doesn't hurt. If they do ask you, you know, to include awards and more than you're able to tell about yourself in your essay, if they allow you to submit supplemental information, then a CV isn't a bad idea, which also gives a better understanding of who you are as a person and your accomplishments. Just make sure that you triple check to make sure that you're not missing anything. And it's not a bad idea to call and confirm that your application has actually been received. Okay. Interview. So now what's happened is that you've sent your application has been received, your applications are read over by a committee, and then you are invited to an interview. Now in the past, before COVID, you would actually go to the campus. Now I can imagine for the next year, it's probably going to be Zoom interviews that will take place. Nevertheless, these are a very important component of your application process. So they do look at your GRE scores. They are usually weighted highly simply because it's a fast way to remove individuals out of the pile, right? So this was a very competitive program. They might just use the GRE scores, and those who scored low scores, they tend to take them out. So it might not be the only thing that's looked at, but if it's a very competitive program, then that might be the way they do it. So you want to give yourself a good chance with the GRE. If you need to take it twice, I think it's worth the investment. Letters of recommendation, strong letters of recommendation from professionals in the field who can compare you to other students and current graduate students are weighted very highly. So that's why I emphasize that you want strong letters of recommendation. Okay. Your essays may be weighted heavily. Your research experience may also make up for other areas in which you have a weakness. So when it comes to each of these components, right, if one is weaker than the other, if you have a very strong essay, strong research experience, and then your letters of recommendation are so-so, it can throw off the balance a little bit. So you want to try your best that all of these are strong. It depends on the school. I would say for myself, I really look at research experience. I think that's something that's very important for my program, educational psychology. So I want to see what kind of research experience the students have coming in. But in different programs, the strength is, it depends, right? So if the research experience isn't what's important, it could be other experience, and all of that is included in the essay. So each of these components, I've tried to weight them, but you want to do your best on each. I'm looking that we only have 10 minutes left. That means I have 5 here. I will just skip through this interview part. Do you need to attend the interview? Yes, I would recommend that you attend all interviews, and now it's going to be easier. You won't be able to get necessarily to the campus for the interview, but you should attend whatever the interview is, whether it's by phone or via Zoom. This is your future, the next 4 to 5 years of your life. So make sure you can make an informed decision and that you've at least spoken to individuals. So you want to speak to faculty that are there. You want to speak to students who are attending the program. These are all very important. And if you aren't able to go to the campus for an interview, if you can even drive there during COVID, depending on how close it is to where you are, so you can see what kind of city you'll be living in, what the cost of living is there, because they do give you a stipend, right? So if rent for an apartment is $800 to $900 a month, and they're giving you $1,500 a month for a stipend or $1,000, then that's not going to cut it, right? So you're going to want to have an idea of the cost of living of where you're going as well. Okay, I'm going to skip some of these. This is another thing I'm just mentioning. So you want general school information. By going to the interview, you get to find that out, seeing the campus and city, or even just reading about the campus and city, looking up the cost of living once again, because you're going to be there for at least 2 years if you're doing your master's, 4 to 5 if you're doing your PhD. All right. I'm going to say, what type of questions will they ask you? Several types of questions. Tell me about your research experience. Tell me about you. You have 15 minutes. I'm giving you $40,000. What research project would you do? How would you design it? And why would you choose that project? These are some questions that can be thrown your way, right? So they're very broad and general questions, and you want to make sure that you're prepared for those. So you can Google graduate student questions, and you can find, general questions that tend to be asked by professors. Okay, let me skip to expenses. So applying to graduate school is time intensive, and it can cost you a few $100s, right? Depending on how many schools you apply to. So each school is going to want a transcript. And depending on the school you go to, a transcript can be $10 to $20, anywhere from $10 to $20 each. So if that's 10 schools, that's $100 just for transcripts. If it's $20, and that's $200 just for transcripts. Your GRE is also going to cost you. You can send 4 free of charge. So you can send your GRE scores to 4 schools free of charge, and then it will cost you $15 for each additional report. These are the costs. So the GRE is $130 at this time, a GMAT $250. So you can see that these can really range in terms of their prices. Application fees can vary. They can be $25 up to $85, even up to $100 to apply, right? Interviews can be expensive. Generally, when you're there, they might put you up and pay for a meal or two, but getting to the interview will be on you. Again, we're in the time of COVID, so you probably won't have to worry about incurring costs for interviews at this point. And lastly, do not forget to cover this whole process in prayer. If you feel compelled to go to graduate school, you feel this is God's calling on your life, then please take the time to really pray over each application, to ask for direction of which is the best school for you to go, which area of study is the best for you. Because if God has placed this on your heart, He will lead you in the right direction. Okay. Just a plug for Andrews University School of Graduate Studies. You can look us up and you can see if there are any graduate programs there that you will enjoy. Okay, I have these resources here. I think I have an outline that I'm going to try to put into the chat. Other than that, I am done. So I'm happy to take your questions.
Right at 7:15 on the nose.
I tried.
Thank you so much for sharing that presentation, powerful presentation, Nadia. Open it up. Anyone have any questions I'd like to ask Nadia while we have 5 minutes remaining?
Oh, I sort of have a question. Thanks for your presentation. It was really great.
No problem.
I just want to ask, I'm in third year right now, and so would there be something that you would recommend me to start doing this summer? I'm not sure if I heard wrong, but should I be starting the GREs?
So you're in your third year.
Yeah.
So remind me again which program you're looking to apply to?
Something in the sciences. I'm actually not sure yet about graduate school programs.
Okay, so the best thing for you to do this summer would be to look and see the programs that you are interested in. Okay. I don't know if the school where you are, if you have professors that have labs, that's never a waste, right? If they're looking for research assistants to help them in the lab over the summer, that will be a good place to start. And I mean, you don't want to work for free, but if that's what's going to get you something on CV, 2 months of free labor is not a bad thing. I'm not selling that, but I definitely ask for a wage first. Mm-hmm. If you can get even a month's experience and you can put that on your CV, I would start with that. So, okay. So you say you're in your third year now?
Yes.
Yeah. So this summer I would gain some experience, and this summer I would start looking up the schools that you're interested in and seeing what they want for their application, what kind of professors they have, and you could start reaching out to professors too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I'll ask one question. Is there anything from your experience going through grad school that really stuck out to you or was memorable? Like, what was that most memorable experience from your time spent applying?
For my time spent applying? Well, I wouldn't follow my example. I was the example of someone who decided last minute, and honestly, it really closed many doors. So I was fortunate that the schools that were left, it was a good school, and I ended up at University of Western Ontario. So that was a good experience. I was fortunate, but there were other schools that I had hoped to apply to. And then when I started looking, it was November. And a lot of those applications had closed. So my advice to you is start early.
Okay. And then when you like got in, did you take opportunities to be like research assistants and teaching assistants as well?
Yes. So that was part of the experience at University of Western Ontario. So when I was accepted to the program, then I automatically got a graduate assistant position, teaching a graduate assistant position. And then I was fortunate that my advisor, he used his grant money to help us as students. So he topped up our funding, but nice. In the lab, right? He said, like, you can't have any other job. Your job is to be in the lab. So it was graduate assistant, and I got research assistant experience too. So in conferences, once you get into graduate school, network. Now I'm still in touch with some of my colleagues who are professors, and then we can exchange research ideas and that kind of thing. So it's It is good. I mean, the best is yet to come. Work, but I think with graduate studies, now you get to focus on the area that you love, right? So in undergrad, you're told that you have to take this, and you're told you have to take these general classes. But when you get to graduate school, like this is your baby, and you get to spend your whole time studying the one area that you really enjoy with experts in the field. It's a good feeling.
Well, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording now. We can still ask questions until I close up the rooms, but I'm going to stop the recording.